Well, g'day folks, Rod Moore here. Welcome to another episode of Learn to Paint TV. Really excited that you're here today. Now, I've got a project today which I've been wanting to do for a while. It's a landscape scene of the Capertee Valley, which is one of Australia's most beautiful regions, just near the Blue Mountains in New South Wales. And I went there on a camping trip, painting trip, when was it, late last year. Unfortunately, it rained the whole time, right? So I didn't get much painting done. But I did manage to get a few photos in. And part of the reason why it's such a beautiful spot is these incredible cliffs with these rocky escarpments. And I thought that might make a nice little painting for us to do. This is one of the campsites there. Now, as always, we're going to use what I call the Moore method of painting to do this painting here today. It's 3 simple steps, 3 colors, and just 3 brushes. And it's what we teach here at Learn to Paint. And I'm going to use a little fan brush for my drawing. So step 1 of the Moore method, we need to draw in our big shapes. So if we have a look at our photo reference material here, our big shapes, we've got this big shape here of the rocky escarpment and cliff faces in the background. And then we've got our row of trees here, which are the middle distance. And then we've got our foreground grasses and the road there. There's really 3 big shapes if we simplify it down enough, which is what we like to do here at Moore Art School and Learn to Paint Academy. So that's what we're going to do. Focusing firstly on 3 big shapes in step 1 with our drawing, and then we can expand on it from there. So to do that, I have got ultramarine blue or French ultramarine, and I've got permanent alizarin or alizarin crimson, which is a warm, cool red. Sorry, it's a, what am I saying? It's a cool red, but it's transparent. That's what I was trying to say. So we're going to use those 2 for our drawing. So using my scruffy fan brush, I'm just going to take some of this blue here and some of this red. And now because I'm filming, I've got extra lights here, and also the paint's been on the board for a little bit of time. It goes a little bit thick, dries out, so I'll just add a little bit of water to it, and it will run because of the way I've got the board vertical. But if you have it flat, then you shouldn't have any problems. So now our first big decision here with this painting, with our drawing, is where is the sort of horizon line. Now it's not a true horizon line, but it's the line there where the sort of foreground and the middle distance separate. So that's what I'm going to focus in on getting in first, is that line. And it's quite low in this painting, right? So I'm going to run that through somewhere around about there. Now don't fuss too much with this drawing. The idea here is not for us to do a perfect drawing, okay? It's just to place big shapes onto our canvas is what we're really doing here. Okay, so now our next big decision is going to be to do with these rocky escarpments. So they come out of the picture at the top, and that one comes down to there, then that one comes down to there. Sort of 3 distinct sections to it, but I'm treating it as all one big shape, aren't I? That's roughly it there. No, not a bad job. Well done, Rod. Pretty easy to do, right? So this one here is the tallest one, and it comes out of the picture. And then this one starts about here, goes down. That one starts just below and follows the same sort of pattern. So these have got these sort of rocky escarpment areas here, 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 a bit over there. And then there's a little bit in sort of in there as well, which it might be nice for us to get a bit of rock face in there as well. Now, what's beautiful about this photo, and the reason why I really like it as a subject, is because it's a view through this framing of these middle distance trees to get to this here, okay? So we've got this sort of middle distance clump of trees. If we treat all those trees as one big shape, it'll just make our life so much easier, right? And we can use a bit of poetic license or a bit of artistic license here. We don't have to get the row of trees exact. So we've got a bit of breathing room here. We want to bring part of a tree just over into the sky there, okay? Bit of a gum tree there. And all these trees are going to end sort of on the horizon line there. So you don't have to bring them down over there. We'll put in, tree trunks and things in there. Okay, so that's beautiful. This is going to be a great painting. I really enjoy painting scenes like this. So then we'll just run this up. So I've got my rocky escarpment there. I don't want to bring my trees up over that. Okay. So we'll just do a row of trees through there. So really, I'm treating this as just one big shape through here, right? That's the most important point that I want you to get. And then the trees can rise up to a higher level over here, and they're going to be different gum trees in there, right? How simple is this? Notice I'm not even worrying about getting neat lines or anything like that. Forget all of that. You just, look, there's a few trees there is what we're getting at here. Okay. That's our drawing step. And this is why the Moore method of painting has helped so many people, is because we've simplified the drawing right down. You don't need to be a great drawer. I do recommend you practice your drawing skills and you learn to draw. But in order to get started painting, you don't need to be a great drawer, right? And we've proven that time and time again. 25,000 students now have followed our method, started painting because of it, okay? So that's step one. We're now going to do step two. Okay, let's do step two. Now, step two is about blocking in, okay? So this is where we start to put color down, and we're going to try and get our colors and our values in the right places on the canvas. And we're going to use our shapes there as the guiding principle for doing that, right? So in order to do that, we must use a big brush. This is a 16-inch by 20-inch canvas. So I'm using a big sort of 1-inch flat brush there, right? It's a hog hair bristle brush. You can see it's well worn, and I've got to ask the question, do I buy them sort of all worn like that? Well, no, I don't. I buy them, I'll show you this just briefly. This is how they come when I buy them. Because the question I was asked was, do I buy the brushes already worn out like that so that they're ideal for painting trees? No, that's how they come, right? And that's how they end up. So we're going to block in color, the right value in the right place on the canvas. Now, if I said before we've only got 3 shapes, we've actually got 4 because we've got a bit of sky. But I'm going to start off with my darkest dark area, which is this tree shape, okay? Now, I said before, we're going to treat all of that as one big shape. Let's have a look at how we're going to do that now, blocking, okay? I'm going to get my blue, I'm going to get my red. Paint's getting a bit mushy there. There's my water bottle. There it is. So when we do our blocking, it's okay for the paint to be just that little bit thinner to help it, you know, move it around. When we start to get into step 3, where we're doing details and so on, we don't want the paint to be too thin. We want to start getting thicker paint and using it a bit more painterly. Okay, you can see that's a nice juicy dark. Look at that. That's just the blue and the red. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to come here into my tree shapes and I'm just going to scrub that paint in. Okay, you can always adjust these edges, but I'm going to scrub in tree shapes here. A bit of the red coming out and a bit of the blue. That's okay, we want that sort of interplay. But what we want to avoid is just having straight lines here. So see how, if I'm not careful, that's going to end up a nice rounded shape on there. So what I'll do, I'll just push part of it up to avoid that happening, okay? Think about how Mother Nature grows. I mean, trees are always trying to grow up and out, but there's an order to them, but there's also a bit of chaos in the way they do that because they have to fight for light in a forest and so on. Okay, but see how this is creating a nice little frame as a view through to our main feature there. It's going to be a great painting, this. Okay, a bit more of that, a little touch of the water in there. I've got a bucket of clean water. It's always good for acrylic painting. Good to change your paint your water each day, because the acrylic paints left in the water, they become a bit honky. You can see I've got a big area here that we're covering with our darkest dark. So you're going to need a fair bit of paint, and this is one of the keys with acrylics, is to ensure that you're using enough paint. Okay, so again I'm going to use a big scruffy brush like that one there. I'll put up a bit more of the permanent crimson, and I'm going to use yellow ochre here. I want to create an earthy tone for our underpainting. Okay, that's it there, and then we'll put the green grasses over the top of that. It'll look fantastic. I'm happy to paint this a little bit thinner. Okay, and again I'm just going to scrub this in. I'm going to lose my road, that's okay. I can always repaint a road, no problem. Okay. Now, because we want this to appear to be behind this row of trees, We need it to be a cooler tone than that one. So I'll pop some blue there. There's going to be a little bit of red in there, but now we're going to add some white. We're going to reduce the value to a lighter one. That's way too much white. Okay. And we're going to make it bluer than what this is. It's got a fair bit of red in it. So now we want to go, okay, I'm going to push this a fair bit bluer. Something like that. Okay, it's probably actually a touch darker. We're going to go a little bit lighter and then maybe a little bit bluer. So I'll add a bit more blue up there. Although it's probably pretty close. But let me just experiment here. So a little bit more blue in there, and a little bit more white. A little bit more blue. That's a bit more like the tone I want, but I'm happy to have a bit of a shift in this here. So we come up to our trees. I'll come to the trees last. Let me just do these edges first. And again, I'm treating this drawing part here as just one big shape. So I'm connecting everything together. Even though I made a few lines and things there before, it was really just to demonstrate to you where everything was going to live. Now we're just going to block that in. A little bit of broken colour coming out off the brush. Perfectly fine. Okay. A little hint of red here and there. That's just because when I'm scrubbing, there's paint accumulates in the ends here and a bit of pressure and it comes out. But that's okay. I actually think that's a good effect because it just breaks up the colour that we're using there. Okay, now we're getting closer to the edges here, so I'm going to take just a little bit more care. We can blur the edges, but just be careful you don't pull too much of that dark paint into this lighter tone. That's the one thing we want to try and avoid. We're going to turn into Rocky Cliffs is sitting behind our middle distance rail trees. I mean, it's an optical illusion. However, the lighter value and the cooler tone are part of creating aerial perspective, and I think right now it's working well for us. So our next step is to get our sky in here, here and here. I'm not going to fuss with this. This painting is not about the sky. So we're going to take mostly white. It's got to be the lightest value. A little bit of this blue here. Okay. If it's a little bit greyed, that's fine. But this is not a painting about sky, the sky in this case, right? So let's just, whoop, that's too dark. See, that's too close to that. I want it to be lighter than that. I want to get that sky a nice pale value with a tint of blue in there. Okay, that's a bit better, isn't it? Let's try that. Yeah, that's a bit better. Okay, I'll come back to the edges. For the moment, I'll just do the open space. Okay, now I've got plenty of paint. And then I'll work those edges. Again, you don't want to clip into that darker value and then pull it into the light of the sky, so just be careful of that. You know, because of the climate here, it is drying while I talk, so because I talk a lot, I'm pretty safe doing what I'm doing. If you're in a cooler climate, then you may have to wait a bit longer. Well, folks, I think we've done a successful block in here. We've got our three big shapes, the distant mountains, middle ground, trees, and our foreground. And of course, then the fourth shape that's created automatically is the sky. We've got all those in, and you can see the values are working. So aerial perspective, how do we make things, seem like they're in the distance? We use things like temperature. Warm colors come forward, which is why we've got that as our base color. And then cooler colors go back into the distance. So we've used that. We've used the darkness to lightness, so our darker tones are in the front, our cooler, lighter tones are in the back. And automatically, just looking at our blocking, you can see that this has definitely got a sense of aerial perspective already into it. There's depth in there. You've got this nice little intimate view looking in between the trees, and it's working the way we would like it to work, right? So I'm happy with the way we're going. That's the end of step 2. Okay, welcome back, folks. Now going to do step 3 here of the Moore method of painting, and this is dried off quite nicely. and we're ready to go. And I think this is going to turn out to be quite a nice little scene. Now, up on my palette here, I've got our primary colours, our standard landscape palette of the French ultramarine blue, the permanent alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, and titanium white. And where we are going to start is with our cliffs here in the background. We want to get those rocky escarpments. I'm going to use a little palette knife here. Now, you could use any sort of palette knife, don't fuss too much about it. But what we're going to do is just basically mix up that tone and then sort of scrape it down. But because this paint's wet, I want to reactivate that but with just a little squirt of water so that it blends the two colours in together. Now, if you're using the Acrylic interactive paints, okay, which is what I recommend you use, okay, then this will be easy for you to do. Depending on what brand you're using, this may not be possible to reactivate it with a bit of water, but give it a try. You know, if you're not using the Acrylic, just experiment. If you can't reactivate it, then what I suggest is just repaint a little bit in here so that we've got a little bit of wet paint to put this rocky escarpment colour into. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my water bottle here, and I don't want to squirt the whole thing, but just in here where I want these rocky escarpments, I'm going to just, a little squirt of water will reactivate that. Now, I don't want to try and paint it exactly as it is. I'm not going to try and paint every rock and every crack in the rock. I'm just after an impression here, an interpretation. So we're going to need white. We're going to have a bit of red in there, and we're going to have a fair bit of the yellow in there. So it's a sort of yellowy orange rock face. Okay, now I don't want too red. Same time, I don't want to over mix it either. So I want to have a bit of broken colour in there. Okay, so that's looking good. So there's a bit of broken colour in there. So what I'll do is I'll pull some paint off of the palette knife. Now you can see it's running a little bit in here. Probably was a little too heavy with my water, and that paint's going to be fairly, fairly wet in there now, which is fine. So what I want to do is take just that edge of the palette knife here, and with this paint here like this, I just want to just scrape through and get a chunk. Now, that's probably a little bit too much on there. That's probably a bit better, because if I have too much paint on the palette knife, it's going to end up too much paint up here as well. So now let's just find our spot. It's somewhere around about here, and what I'm going to do is just drag that in like so. I can break it up a little bit if I need to. There's another little bit just around there. Okay. Try and avoid getting hard edges like that, but we will put a bit of foliage around it just to break that up. So we get another little chunk of that paint, and down along here. Like so. A bit out. Whoop, that's a bit. A little bit in here. And again, I'm not trying to get it exact, because if I was trying to paint every rock and so on, we would drive ourselves a bit crazy, I think. We're a bit crazier than we already are, us mad artists. Okay. Something like that. And what we want to do then is mix up a pale green for our foliage. So it's going to be mostly blue, big swipe of that white, a little bit of this yellow ochre, a pinhead of the red. Okay. Why a pinhead of the red? It'll just grey it back a little bit. A little bit more of that yellow ochre. Now this is off in the distance. We don't want it to be too dominant and so on, but we're just going to maybe a touch darker than that. A little bit more blue in there, a little bit more of that red. Okay, and we're just going to just work that up to the edges here. I'm not going to try and paint every tree and so on, and I'm going to leave a fair bit of that underpainting to come through as well. And I'm just going to push it up to the edges of where I've got that rocky escarpment. That rock, you know, the colour we've just put on there for that rocky escarpment, that's going to be fairly wet. That's fairly thick paint. So I just need to be careful I don't clip into that too much at this stage. Okay. fairly light here in value. I'm hoping it'll dry a bit darker, but there might be parts where I might just, like in here, I want to create a little bit of a shadowy effect just in there. So I'll push that tone a little bit darker here and there. So I'm going to leave that for the moment because you don't want to go too far in any one area because everything has to relate to everything else in the painting. And until you bring up the other parts of the painting, like, you know, my brightest greens in here for the grass and my trees, I need to bring that up to a certain level to start to understand whether I'm too light or what's going on in here. So what we'll do is we'll take a bit of titanium white, take a little bit of the ultramarine, we'll take some of the yellow ochre, we'll mix those together. And so when you mix the yellow ochre and the ultramarine blue with titanium white, you get this off muted green. So if I add a little bit of cadmium yellow, it just gives it a little bit more vibrancy. Okay, so I'm going to use that for our distant greens on the lawn here. Okay, so sort of through here. Just going to use that. Okay. So it's a muted green. And I might just moisten that up a little. And now I'm going to add in more of this cadmium yellow into it, a little bit more blue, so keep it green. Okay, and you can see that. So we're creating a bit of a transition to the brighter foreground sort of green. That's the grassy area where you can camp and so on. Yeah, I mean, there's the trees, so we don't want to have the trees looking like lollipops, which is very easy to do with trees, trust me. Okay, so we need a eucalyptus colour. These are gum trees, Australian gum trees, and it's sort of olivey green tone. That's probably a little bit too rich. So I'm just using our, four colours basically: our blue, bit of red, bit of the yellow ochre, and to brighten it up, a little bit of that cadmium yellow. So you can see I've got a bit of paint on the brush. You don't want too much paint on your brush for this exercise. Now, typically we would find a light source, which direction's the light coming in. But what I find is to pull the eye into the painting, if we highlight more the sides that point in, even though it sort of defies the laws of the light and all that. But some laws are made to be broken. So if I establish that foliage so that it points into the painting like this. Okay. And I'm just scrubbing that around, creating little mushroom shapes here. Get a little touch more blue in there, a little pinch of the red. Little subtle shift, but as I get sort of more into the dense part of this foliage, subtle shifts can be good. And then I'll just roll some of it back that way through in here. I'll put in some brighter greens, don't worry about that. I'm just getting a base colour down for some different greens. We're going to touch bluer again. So you can see I've got different shades of green, different types of green, and we'll just get some of that darker blue where it's cooler. Okay, down here, we don't want it all to be bright greens, so we've got some cooler greens in there as well, like so. So you can see you've got your brightest greens on the outer edge, which is what you'd expect from a forest, yeah? And the only problem is when you mix three primaries, it can tend to go a bit muddy, so I tend to only try and mix two, but not to worry. Let's have a look here. We've got a tree trunk that's running to about here, and I've got a shadow underneath it. Okay. Now that grassy area is a little bit wet at the moment. So, and then I'll just strengthen up some foliage around that. You'll see what I mean in a moment. But at the moment, that tree trunk doesn't look like it's going to anywhere in particular. So I'll make it more obvious, is what I mean. It's good when you can put them over the paths, like I've just done there. That trunk sort of goes over that path there. Might just need to use the finger brush just to soften some of that in. Got to be careful. One of the sort of challenges I always have is I make my shadow areas a bit too heavy. Now we do have a ghost gum right in through here, so I've got just the right colour for that. This white, little touch of the blue. I don't want it to be pure white. Okay, I'm going to use this flat brush. I've got it loaded up with paint. And this ghost gum, we don't have to dominate, but it's going to run right up through here. Now what I'll do is I won't put it everywhere. Or we can cover it up with foliage anyway. What we don't want is just this one solid line. We want to have it broken up a little. Okay. It's good. Now we do have a little campsite there, which if I take some of this tone here, I can get a little bit of that white, just lighten the backside. I just want a grey like that on my palette knife, and I'm just going to put a tent in there like that. Because we like to keep it a bit loose and a bit impressionistic. Okay. But we put in little details where they're needed, like around this little tent. Okay. I'm not going to put any more than just that little tent, maybe a little touch of red to indicate that they've left something there. So I'll use a little bit of white there. And maybe they've got a little post and a table or so. Run that along there and there. So there you go, folks. I think that's a good little demonstration of how to create a dramatic landscape scene. We just review our photo there. You can see we've got this grand cliff face here with the rocky escarpments. We've got this row of trees and this nice white ghost gum there, and this sort of like little setting here where you can camp and so on. And I think we've pretty much captured the feel of that. We've got this grand presence of the distant mountain and rocky escarpments, and this little setting here, and the little tent there gives it a bit of scale, even though it's not a painting about the tent, but it does help to just add a little bit of scale overall to what we're doing. And I think this nice white ghost gum here adds just a nice little sort of lead in that runs your eye up to the center of interest. Same with the path here, works its way back into the painting. So a fun little landscape. A quick little demo for you to show you the working process. You've seen the 3 steps of the Moore method, and if you follow them, you'll find it easier to start constructing landscape paintings. So hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. This is the Capertee Valley. Not sure what we'll call it yet, but it's a scene from the Capertee Valley. Hope you've enjoyed it. I've certainly enjoyed bringing it to you. Now, make sure you check out all the episodes of Learn to Paint TV at the website, which I'll put underneath me. And more importantly, go and register for our free course at the Learn to Paint Academy. If you go to www learntopaint.academy, and then when you get there, click on the button that says free course. You can register for a free course where I go through 2 complete demonstrations of how to do landscape painting using the Moore method of painting, and I break it down into a lot more detail for you as well. So go and register for the free course there. And if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe. Do all those good things. We certainly appreciate it, and it helps us to spread the magic of painting around the world to more people. Until next week, happy painting, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Learn to Paint TV. Cheers.